welcome to my studio. Hello, my name's Carolyn Kelly. Most people call me Carrie, and I hope you will too. I am a soft pastel painter from a little town called Elliott in southern Maine, but my studio is right across the river in beautiful downtown Dover, New Hampshire. I primarily paint landscapes, waterscapes, and still lifes that are inspired by this coastal area. And I paint a couple of different styles depending on the subject matter, the materials I'm using, and also what I have in my mind that I want the end result to be. So this is one of my recent paintings. It's called Remembrances. I took a bit of a risk with this one because it's a large pastel painting. It's 16 by 20, and I did it on a paper that I've never used before. I've tried several different sanded papers, which are terrific for soft pastel because they accept so many layers of pastel that you can really blend colors and get any kind of effect you like. But this paper was recommended by one of my favorite online instructors, Marla Baguetta. This is Hahnemühle velour paper, and it's actually quite fuzzy. It's kind of like velvet. And I knew I was either gonna love it or hate it, so it was worth a try. I ordered one piece, and I knew within a first few strokes, I really love this stuff. So I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about that today. By the time I finished this painting, I knew I was gonna make more in this style. And a very kind woman saw this online. She asked me to do a video tutorial. I've never done one before, if you couldn't tell. So I hope you enjoy this, and I hope that you will, whether you enjoy it or not, will leave me some comments so that I can improve doing video tutorials. It's something I'd like to really get into. We're gonna start out with a description of the materials that I used for this. We're gonna do a little mini demo talking about things you might want to know about working with these materials. And then I'm gonna try to Bob Ross it up and see if I can talk and paint at the same time while I paint a hanging bundle of eucalyptus like this one. So welcome to my first, hopefully not last, video tutorial. I hope you enjoy it. So here are our materials. If I'm painting indoors, I'm almost always painting from a digital photo. I save the photos, my reference photos, to my laptop, and that's what I paint from. I have here the Hahnemühle velour paper that I got from Blick. Please excuse my German because I took French in high school. I'm gonna spell that name for you. It's Hahnemuhle, and it's their velour paper. This actually comes from a German company that dates back to 1584. It comes in maybe 8 different colors. And this one they just call middle gray. It's a great neutral. It's got a little bit of tan in it that I like. I pre-selected my soft pastel palette, which is a mix of a few different brands. And I might add or subtract a few sticks as I go, but looking at my photograph and knowing that I want to keep things fairly muted and a little higher key, a little lighter, I pulled these colors from the stash. They are a light brown new pastel that I'm going to use for my initial drawing, and a very dark warm red, and also a very dark middle green. This is right in the middle between blue and yellow, and those are my 2 darkest colors. I also have here kind of a periwinkle blue, and a light blue, and a range of teals in different values and intensities. Same thing for the greens and the yellows. And then I have 2 kind of peachy, very light oranges that are going to be great for the reflected light in some of the shadows. And then finally, this kind of lavender white. It's a very, very light lavender. You'll notice most of these colors are pretty high key, meaning they're on the light side of the value spectrum. And I thought that would work well with the texture of the paper and also the soft atmospheric mood that I had planned to paint. Also, we'll need a ruler and pencil, a drawing board and easel, and a rag for keeping your hands clean. So here we are at the easel, and you can see I've already got my paper taped up here. It's on the drawing board. And I've already used a colored pencil to mark the border lines of the painting I'm going to do. One of the first things I noticed in doing that, it's not quite as bad today as it was before, but I don't think this paper is very well suited to using colored pencil. When I feel this line, it actually feels a bit waxy. It resisted laying down pigment, and also there's kind of a groove that the pencil left in the paper here. And that doesn't suit me. I want everything to look kind of flat and hazy. I don't want there to be physical texture in this painting besides what it's given by the paper and by the pastels. I tried a couple of things here just to test what it would look like to lay down some pastel over a colored pencil line, and I don't dislike it. Kind of depends on what you want the outcome to be. Like I said, I want to keep things a little flat and a little hazy. The energy in this painting is really going to come from the interaction of color and light. And that brings me to my next tip, which is layering color. This paper will take many layers of soft pastel, and which means that you can layer one color over the next to get exactly what you want. You don't have to be afraid of choosing the wrong color. You can see how soft that is. And this paper takes this color just like a magnet. Look at how great that stroke is. I don't bother trying to finger blend with this very much because the mark really stays right where I put it. And it's much easier to just use the stick itself to layer the color and to change the color. But that's going to work best if you use a very light hand. Get a stick here. We'll try the white. So I am just skimming the paper here. I am not pressing down very hard at all. And this paper is like a sponge. It just takes the pigment. So I think that's all I wanted to let you know about using soft pastel on this paper. I'm going to set up again for doing the painting, and we'll show you how that works. So I started the original painting that we talked about, Remembrances, using a light brown new pastel, and that's what I'm going to do my drawing with here. I'm going to keep it pretty simple today. This is a painting of some eucalyptus that's hanging on the wall here in the studio. And I thought that using this nice soft paper, the light colors, would be very suitable for this. Dried flowers always make me think of things that people are keeping as remembrances, and that's how I came up with the name for this painting, the title for it. Now, I am not concerned about painting every single leaf here. It's almost always true when you're painting. You want to give your viewer an impression of your subject, but that doesn't mean that you have to paint it exactly the way it is in this case. I'm working from a photograph. I also want to make sure that I am showing these leaves from a variety of different directions because they don't all face straight on. I'm going to add some stems here. And right here, I think I'm going to have the nail on the wall. And that's pretty much all I need for the initial drawing. So the next thing I usually do is start blocking in color. And for this one, I'm going to start with my very dark red. I use that red in this painting just to indicate some of the stems. Give them a little darker color. And I'm not too worried here that they look too dark because I'm going to be letting the other pastels kind of pass over these areas. Just using a very simple series of marks there. I'm also going to use my dark green and set that in. I like to start with my darkest darks. I tend to leave my lightest lights until the end. Whites in particular with pastel have a tendency to really pick up other colors. And you can notice here I'm kind of changing my drawing up a little bit. One thing that I'm still working on as a painter is loosening up a little bit, what we call loosening up. My paintings are still a little bit stiff, I admit that. But there we go, we've got some dark darks in there. And usually what I'll do is block in color like this. And then once I've got all my colors in, I can come back and restate these darks if I need to. The leaves are overlapping each other, so they're casting shadows onto each other. And there we go. I think that'll do it there for now. That one's got an interesting little notch in it. I like that. Let's see. We'll stick with that for now. Okay. I'm going to go on to another green. I'm going to pick kind of my yellowy green here. This is a very olive color. And get that in. I don't know if it's nervousness here because I'm in front of the camera, but I'm not using quite as soft a line or as a hand as I would normally use. So I'm going to try and soften that up. I want to move this color around a little bit in my painting. I don't want to just have it in one place or on one leaf. Because what this does is give you color harmony. And you can see when I lay that olive down on top of the dark green, it's really affecting that color a lot. It's lightening it up, it's making it more yellow. And I can layer and layer and layer on this paper. I'm going to put a little bit of this over here. I find the eucalyptus leaves very interesting in that it's hard for me to tell. Are they blue? Are they yellow? Are they green? Or at least in my photograph, they kind of come across as all three. Which makes them a lot of fun to paint. It makes them very interesting to me. Let's get some bluer green in here. And ooh, that's a much softer pastel than the last one I was using. It is really laying down color on that paper. I see more of this blue back here. Maybe some back here on this leaf. I'll leave that one alone for now. And I've got another bluish green. This is a much lighter one. Help me get some of those edges highlighted. This down here. And then this one also. I can mix that olive with the light green. It's kind of pretty. Like I said, I'm using the stick to mix colors. I'm not using my fingers. That green is a little bit punchy. I think I'll be using something to bring that down before I'm done here. But I do like how it's giving me not exactly crisp edges. You're not going to get that on this paper. But the contrast does really help one leaf form jump out from another. They separate in space, or they give the appearance of separating in space. So there's that. I'm going to put my white background in next. And you will notice as we go that this background is not going to stay white. I've got some other colors that I'm going to work into it because the light is really bouncing around in this painting. Not worried about going over the edges a little bit. That softens things, and that's not a bad thing in this case. One thing I really like that I wanted to say about pre-selecting a palette is that when we have many colors to work with, we have a tendency, or I have a tendency, I should say, to get distracted, to get unsure of what color I wanted to use. Where was that perfect blue in the palette that I saw? And so when I pre-select a palette, I can get my initial drawing down, and then I can just go through one by one on those initial colors and get them all down on the paper. And then if I need to change things up, if I need to add colors to my palette, that's okay. But I've got an initial layer of paper all over this, or I'm sorry, initial layer of pastel all over the surface of the paper that I can kind of respond to. And that, to me, is really what painting is. You're seeing how the colors respond to one another and create the effect that you're looking for. I'm going to add the little tie here. That's binding those together. You can see I'm kind of blowing on the paper. That, if I were working with other artists in the studio, that would kind of be a no-no. I'm willing to take the risk, but there are elements in these pigments that are not great for your lungs, and I wouldn't want to be blowing them into the air when I'm working around other people. So I think next, well, the first thing I'm going to do is get into the shadows. And the shadows are why I picked up this periwinkle blue. So let's see what those look like in my photo. They kind of come around like this. In that photo, I have blue shadows on one side because the light is coming down from this direction. And then on the other side, over here, I end up with kind of warm, almost orange shadows that the light is bouncing into, or it's reflecting that orange color onto the wall. And that's what makes this painting really interesting. It's that play of light and shadow, and not just the subject matter. That's so cool. Let's see, I may have a little bit of this down here. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Some of that periwinkle can't even come into the leaves here because there's shadows falling on the leaves. And I need to get up in here. There's shadows from the string. Oh, maybe that goes more this way. There are shadows from the stems. And there's a shadow from the nail on the wall. So that's a good start. I'll come back. I'm definitely going to come back and work into those again. Let's get the ones on the other side. And I think when I did that painting, I initially started with quite a bright yellow. This is light that is bouncing in from another direction. And it's picked up color somewhere. I don't think this color, or the light that's hitting this, is as warm as it looks in the image. The source of the light, I don't think, is as warm. Once it comes down and hits these objects or reflects off of them, it's picked up a lot of extra color. And that is definitely one of the things that initially made me take the photograph. I noticed all these bundles of dried flowers hanging on the wall and such beautiful soft light around them. So I'm okay with that for now. That's all right. The next thing I'm going to do is get into the teals. And I'm going to use these teals to kind of bring these colors together. I've got very different greens here. And if I layer over all of them with some teals, it's going to make them seem more related. So let's start out. I'm going to start out with my very middle teal. And I can layer that right over. Notice I am not worried about the borders between leaves now. I'm actually trying to make them seem more related. I can come back in. I can come back in later and restate my darks, which I will do. But first, I'm just going to bring these together a little bit. I think this might be working a little more efficiently than it did last time, which makes sense. This is the second time I'm doing it. We'll see if that turns out to be true. I might be jinxing myself. But it's possible that I may not need all the colors I laid out. Here we are with that. I'm going to go into my more blue and gray teal now. And where do I want to use that? That's very dark. That's much darker than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to use that to restate my shadows some. But I don't think I need too much of it. So right now I'm looking at what other, how can I combine colors to make them seem a little more natural. I'm going to use this darker olive green. Maybe my darker teal here. I'm putting down layer after layer of color. Choosing mid-tones to kind of blend lighter colors into darker. Ooh, that was nice. I think right there, I want that one to sit back a little more. That's better. And hit this edge so that it jumps out towards us. That's better. Blend that a little bit more. It's one of the things I love about using pastel on sanded paper, or textured paper, I guess I should say, because this is definitely not sanded paper. But the fact that it allows you to put down a lot of pigment is such a huge difference between working with this or working with like a Strathmore or a Canson's drawing paper, really, because you can get much more depth of color than you can with those other papers. I'm going to lighten up that edge a little bit. I like how it was a little brighter green right there. Maybe set that back just a tad. There we go. So not bad. We're getting there. We're getting there. I'm going to work into the background a little bit more. And there were two things I did for the background. So in the shadows, we've got that periwinkle blue. I just want to knock it back a little bit, make it look a little bit more natural. And I did that by overlaying it with some light blue. Still got, you know, that kind of grayness of the periwinkle, but it's also got the white of the wall coming through and the coolness. And I can let that bleed out just a little bit into the wall color as well, and make that more interesting. In fact, I think, how do I want that to work in my composition here? I think I'm going to just go over this whole side with some light blue. And when I'm ready, I'll come back and layer over again with the white where I want it to be. These shadows are going to be deeper, closer to the object, and more diffuse as they get away from the object. So we'll try to show that by lightening up, softening the edges. That's pretty good. And I think, yeah, this could stand to have some light blue right in here as well. Decent. I'm going to put a little blue on this side too for contrast against that yellow. And then I'm gonna mellow out the yellow. There. Okay. So, one thing that I forgot. With this yellow, the other thing I'm noticing over here is that there's some green reflected into it onto the wall. So I'm going to add that before I go any further. And it is, you know, it's reflecting off the leaves of the plant. So it's going to be greener, closer to the leaves there. I can let that kind of overlap. That feels a little better. It looks kind of dirty right now. We're gonna lighten that up. I have a kind of light creamy yellow here that I'm gonna layer over. I don't want the edges too soft between the leaves and the wall. Or between the leaves and the shadows, because I want the leaves to be distinct from the wall. Higher contrast will help with that. Losing a little bit of my form here, but that's okay. I'm going to bring it back in now with the white. So I'm going to go over all this blue and all the shadow. Bring back that white wall color some. And just like in life, there are places where, you know, these more light is bouncing in, less light is bouncing in. The shadow edges are harder or softer. And if you don't make them all the same, that's going to feel more like reality. So I'm going to make these a bit sharper. Right here. Right now I am using quite a hard touch. This is not like on sanded paper where you're going to get a very sharp edge. If you use a less delicate hand. Light bouncing in here. So the other thing I did with these shadows, particularly down in this area, is I added some of this peachy orange. And that is a nice color. It's a really nice contrast with that purpley blue. think I also want some of that up in here. I can bring back some of those slightly sharper lines. Just here and there. And then if I've gone too far, knock them back again with the white. Kind of decide where I want those to be. This is a bit distracting to me, so I'm just gonna carve that out. And let's see, we're getting there. I'm gonna add a little of my light blue in the shadow here on the string, and my lightest yellow on the other side. It's almost a very warm white. It kind of glows nicely. And then I think I'm going to come in and restate my darks a little bit. So there, it's really hard to get detail on this paper. It does not want me to make sharp lines. In fact, I'm going to use the new pastel instead, which is not much better. Look at that. Yeah, at least it gives me another dimension and color. I'll see what I can do about all that. If I can find a sharper place on my stick. That helped. That always helps. Just restate some of these stems. I don't want the leaves to look like they're just hanging in the air. That one. I think what I said was a notch there before. It might actually be two leaves coming together. I don't want to go too far with that. I don't want to have to redraw everything. So I'm just going to go through and touch up now. Get harder edges where I want them, softer edges where I want them. Maybe I could get into this very light teal. Where do I want that to be? It's kind of a highlight. There. Let these leaves have a lower contrast so that they kind of sit back on the wall. This one has a nice, well, we can do a few of those. There are some spots where the stem almost extends into the leaf. It's got kind of a spine. We can indicate that with this very light teal. A little more of an edge there. Just a little. Okay. So I think that's pretty much saying what I wanted to say. It's soft, like soft memories. The light is bouncing around in there quite beautifully. The leaves look distinct from one another and from the wall without being too stiff, too hard-edged. Our eyes really don't see like that. They see some things more in focus than others. Do a little bit more up in here. Darken this. That is a super soft pastel. Even more so than I'm used to working with. I'm getting kind of curious myself what brand that is when I start working with my pastels. I pull all the labels off them so the labels aren't in the way. And then it becomes very hard to tell which was which brand. But that's normal because you want to be able to use different sides of the pastel. If you've been paying attention here, I've been using the ends of the pastel. I use the flat side of the pastel. I use the very edge so I can get, some sharper lines when I need those. And you really can't use the whole thing if it's got a label on it. I'll lighten that up just a tad. And let's see. Cut back into here using the negative shape, the wall color, to make those ends of those branches look a little bit sharper. And you can see in there where my white is really picking up that brown. I'm actually gonna go back in with the periwinkle and try and improve that a bit. That helped. That helped. A little bit more yellow up here. And soften it with the white. And this is the stage where I normally take a step back from the painting. I try and look at it from a bit of a difference and see what else it might need. I also might take a photograph of it because for some reason, when you see it on that camera screen, it's much easier to tell what your painting needs. Maybe because it's just in such smaller dimensions. Maybe because it feels like you're more removed from it. I don't know if that gives an emotional kind of what's the word? Makes you a little more subjective, I think. Not as tied to it emotionally. But I think as far as the tutorial goes, this is pretty much what I wanted to say and what I wanted to show you. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you'll leave some comments for me. Please visit my website. It's cmjkelly.com. If if you're not seeing this there, I actually haven't decided yet if I'm going to post this on the website or on YouTube or both or neither. But please let me know what you think, and hopefully I'll get a chance to make more of these tutorials. And for the very sweet woman who complimented my painting and asked me to do this, I want to say thank you, because without somebody encouraging me to go ahead and make this video, I don't think I would have done it. So thank you very much. Stay safe and enjoy your painting. Bye-bye.